This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, I'm not saying it's aliens, but aliens.
Hello everyone, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi review comedy something podcast. I don't know why I said comedy. I think we're funny, but I don't know if
I'm pretty funny. You're pretty funny too.
Yeah, you're pretty funny. I have a dry, self-deprecating humor.
And that is acceptable.
The other voice that you are hearing is my good friend and co-host, Dr. Isix.
Hi!
And this week we watched Who Mourns for Adonais from the original run of Star Trek.
I still don't know, honestly.
Apparently no one. They're like mildly vexed for Adonais.
Yes. Well, I guess there is some, maybe twisting of the term Adonais. Maybe not like the, mythological version, but if you, translate that to be, like the gods in general, which is apparently like a Hebrew sort of version of it, then it means like who's mourning for the gods, in which case, well, we do kind of find out then.
Yes, the title taken loosely from a Percy Shelley poem. And yes, it does kind of just translate as sort of like, who mourns for the gods? Which is no one, apparently.
Yeah. No one of importance, anyway.
This episode is co-written by Gilbert Ralston, who wrote some other episodes, also wrote for many contemporary TV shows like Wild Wild West, I Spy, etc.
Groovy.
Also written by Gene L. Kuhn, who's showing up again. Might explain why the dialogue's not horrible in this one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe there's some magic in this one.
We only have two notable guest stars in this episode. There's a few random lieutenants running around.
Yeah, like Mr. Kyle and that other person.
But the main cast, we have Michael Forrest playing Apollo.
And just Apollo, like the Greek god Apollo, not like Apollo Creed, not like a Apollo Moon guy, just Apollo.
Yeah, Apollo, last name not specified.
Apparently he's like still acting. So
he still does voice acting, mostly now. He actually reprised his role as Apollo on a fan web series, the Star Trek Continues.
Oh yeah, I should check that out at some point.
He does a lot of American anime dubs and was the voice of something called Prince Olympus on Power Rangers Lightning Speed Rescue.
Neat.
So like I have not kept up with Power Rangers since the mid-90s, but I understand they still go.
Yes, they go and they have light speed and they're rescuing and they're seven samurai of something, I don't know.
Power Rangers 37 Ronin. We also are guest starring Leslie Parrish as Lieutenant Carolyn Palamas, which is such an awkward last name.
I'm not sure what that is. Maybe Greek?
Maybe. That would be thematic.
Yes.
She also had many contemporary credits in the 60s and 70s, also on Wild Wild West and My Three Sons and Man from U.N.C.L.E.
She was also in Hogan's Heroes.
Oh, yeah. That was such a bad show. You know what's funny? World War II POWs.
Yeah, it's just wacky hijinks all over the place, man.
Ugh. This is another episode where Kirk fights God.
Yep, got to punch God occasionally. Otherwise, you're not man enough, I guess.
Not a manly man.
Be a man.
If we start singing Disney, we are going to get sued.
Oh, okay. I'll try to tone it down then.
We can do a lot of things, but singing Disney always gets you in trouble.
Can I Weird Al it?
Just learned this. You can Weird Al it if it is directly parodying the contextual nature of the song itself. Otherwise, you're just using the tune for an unrelated thing, and it's not protected under fair use.
I get it, because then you're making a parody of that song, not just like, well, I'm making a joke about eating pies or something.
You can't, you couldn't sing about pies. You could rearrange the lyrics to make it a critique of toxic masculinity based on the perceptions of manhood that are presented through that song.
Note to self, make this a project. Anyway, we're diverging quite a bit.
Yeah, we are. Oh, it's late, and I'm tired, and I was in a weird mood when I wrote this, so this is going to be interesting.
I enjoy weird moods. They often end up resulting in some rather creative decisions.
Okay, we may as well just jump in here.
So we start in space.
Yes, the Enterprise is surveying a system which is apparently unusually lacking in intelligent life.
I guess there's not many planets in the universe that don't have intelligent life in Star Trek.
I mean, it seems.
Yeah.
Based on everything we see in this show and later shows, it seems there are very few planets that do not support intelligent life.
Very suspicious. Then what about the Fermi paradox? Oh, God.
There is no paradox in the universe of Star Trek. We have been being visited by aliens since prehistoric times, as revealed in Star Trek Voyager.
Yes.
There is no paradox.
Yeah, and kind of in this episode, too, but I'm getting ahead of ourselves.
We are introduced to this week's lieutenant, who is named Carolyn Palamas. She is an expert in archaeology and ancient civilizations, which will come in handy later.
Yeah, so it's good you have random historians on board sometimes.
Scotty has a still creepy, but probably the best yet interaction with this woman, where he very politely asks her to join him for coffee.
Yes, it definitely comes off a little kind of 60s awkward, but it's still way better than the usual sort of stuff we got on this sort of thing.
Once again, Scotty, being a normal human person, elevating himself above the rest of the crew.
Yep. Good old Scotty.
You know, yeah, by modern standards, this seems a little awkward and forceful. By the standards of the time they were writing this is like the most polite thing in the universe.
You know, maybe they are thinking it's like, well, he's like non-American, so we have to write him differently.
There's one thing that they knew about the Scottish people at the time. It's how polite and not creepy they were.
So, good?
Yeah.
Question mark?
She accepts his invitation and they both leave, much to the chagrin of McCoy, who for some reason is concerned with this budding relationship they have.
McCoy, just come on.
Yeah, we get some good old-fashioned sexism about how she, as a true woman, will eventually get married and leave Starfleet.
You know, because men don't do that too.
No,
and that,
never.
And that's just everyone's destiny is to be a man and stay in Starfleet forever, or be a woman and leave.
Flunk him out or marry him off.
Yeah, and or you have the one episode ways back where you get married on the ship, or you're about to get married, and then your spouse dies, and then yeah.
Well, it's a good thing too. Otherwise, she would have had to retire. Apparently.
Oh yeah. Man, this show's weird.
After this wonderful exchange, the Enterprise begins scanning the planet called Polox 4, which is an M-type planet with no life forms, except for all of the life forms that are there, so I don't know what they mean by life forms. Because there's definitely plants and animals if it has an oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere.
Well, maybe they don't think plants are alive, and they just didn't notice the animals.
There's no way that you can have an M-type planet capable of sustaining human life that does not have a functioning ecosystem. It's impossible.
Yeah, it would be freakishly weird and unstable.
Yeah, I don't even know how you would develop an oxygen atmosphere without some sort of plants. Oxygen isn't usually a thing that you find floating around in space particularly often.
It's too flammable, you see.
Just as they are discussing how there's no life forms on this planet, a massive green hand appears and grabs the ship.
Talk to the hand.
Like, physically grabs the ship out of space.
Yoink.
After commercial, the ship is stuck, being held by massive green hand. Soon after this happens, a massive floating head appears, though not green.
The big giant head.
The big giant head hails them and introduces himself as Apollo. Yes, that Apollo.
Yes, that the Apollo, as in the Greek god Apollo, dude who's all powerful and all that fun stuff. And not like an Apollo space program like the god Apollo.
Kirk demands that Apollo release the ship, but he goes no and squeezes it until it almost breaks, and Kirk acquiesces to his demands and agrees to beam down on the planet to meet him.
all right, you're going to crush us or we go down and say hello. I guess we'll go say hello.
Also, I'm not writing this down because it's just awkward, but everything Apollo says is in this weird, like, old-timey English speak.
Yes, very attempting to be Shakespearean, but not quite, and it's really verbose.
Like, before he crushes the ship, he says, lest you defy me, and I close my hand thus.
Okay, you thusly do that. Thusly,
yeah,
we
there's
are
a lot
scared.
of thuses. There's no heretofores or hithertos, but there's a lot of thuses.
It's like how it's like when I'm arguing on the internet in text. I use thus a lot, but you know. And thus you are full of crap.
Only because the internet doesn't accept logical notation typing easily.
Yes.
Kirk, Scotty, Chekhov, McCoy, and Palamas beam down to a small garden next to a tiny little Greek temple.
Yeah, as you do.
There they find Apollo sitting in his golden throne. You're mixing stuff a bit. I'm pretty sure they did not have thrones like this in ancient Greece, but
Not really, no.
Apollo tells them that he has been waiting for them for thousands of years, ever since he first visited Earth.
Yeah, and I think the number that they keep bringing up is about 5,000 years, and I think that pops up a couple times, which does have some awkward questions about the timeline here. But anywho,
no one knows when this show takes place. Apollo also takes this opportunity to hit on Palamas, which Scotty doesn't like very much.
Well, yeah, you know, Scotty's you're not quite there, Scotty, to be justifying this kind of outrage, but
yeah, you like just asked her out for coffee.
Excuse me, might be a better thing as opposed to how he sort of reacts here.
Kirk impatiently asks what Apollo wants, and he says that he's been waiting for them to arrive so that they could stay and worship him forever, just as their ancestors did. And also, I disabled your communicators and transporters, so you're stuck now. Kirk refuses this because he's the only one who's going to get worshipped around here.
Damn it.
Apollo then decides to show his godlike powers by growing, giant man style to the size of the temple.
Becomes huge and large.
Back on the ship, Spock is working his hardest to establish communication, and they have not accomplished anything. That is your ship update for the minute.
And Uhura mentioned something about jammed frequencies, and there's energy reserves and get those ready, etc., but it's not a whole lot going on.
Big Apollo gets tired and disappears.
As you do. Once you become huge and large, it does kind of take a lot out of you.
Now alone, the landing party takes stock of their situation. Palamas gives us a rundown on Apollo, who is the brother of Artemis and son of Zeus, just like every Greek god minus Aphrodite.
Yep. Are you God? Yes. Are you Zeus? No. Then you're probably the son of Zeus.
McCoy scanned Apollo, and he appears to be pretty much human, except for like a weird extra organ that we find out about later, but I figured I'd mention it here because I don't have time for this weird, slow reveal junk.
Yeah, I think he sort of mentions something, a reference to it real quick, but it's kind of very easy to miss. And
Kirk sends Chekhov and Scotty off to look for the power generator that they believe Apollo must need to do all of his cool little magic tricks.
Some sort of ambient field.
And then he starts on his ancient aliens theories about how maybe this really is the god Apollo from history.
Ooh.
Yeah, he doesn't have the hair, though. He needs that weird fro thing to look appropriately crazy on TV.
Yeah.
Apollo reappears and immediately starts demanding they worship him and give him tribute in exchange for living there with him in what he calls paradise, but is apparently some sort of servitude.
Yeah, so you want us to worship you and give you stuff, but we don't really have anything. Also, you haven't really provided us anything other than trapping us here.
Yeah, basically.
So what's in it for us?
Apollo threatens them a bit, hits on Palamas a bit more. Scotty gets really bothered by this and draws his phaser, but Apollo lightning zaps it.
Ouchies.
Chekhov also tries to pull his phaser, but apparently his just stopped working. He didn't have to get lightning zapped.
Yeah, they're all fused and things like that. They just don't work anymore. I guess Apollo realized, this is a weapon. I should probably zap that, and while I'm at it, just kind of disable the rest real quick.
Apollo goes, haha, your toys will no longer work. Also, I need to creepily change your clothes, miss. And he turns Palamas' uniform into this very impractically revealing pink toga-looking thing.
Yeah, it's very much Star Trek original series sexy outfit.
This is like the third or fourth time that some sort of all-powerful alien has decided to magically change the clothes of one of the women around him.
This is kind of a trope they keep coming back to, and it's a little weird.
But also, every single time it happens, the woman goes, "This is way prettier than what I used to be wearing.
So I'm going to be happy with this, or I'm going to change into it, or whatever, you know?"
There's never a like, holy, you just changed my clothes, that's not cool. It's just, oh my god, look pretty.
Because apparently we have to believe that women are only in it for the fashion, I guess.
That's why the miniskirts.
Yeah.
Apollo moves to take Palamas with him. Scotty again gets really angry and objects, and then with a casual toss, Apollo throws him across the square before vanishing with Palamas.
So apparently he has powerful backhand powers and vanishing.
McCoy reports that Scotty is just stunned, but he's very worried about Palamas since Apollo just, has these weird mood swings, and if she ticks him off, he's just going to, kill her out of hand, probably.
So, in other words, they're all kind of doomed, but right now she's more doomed than the rest of them, potentially.
Kirk gets annoyed with Scotty for continuously trying to get himself killed for no reason.
Yeah, Scotty, you're usually so good, but you're kind of losing it here.
Kirk says that Apollo can't be a god, but if he did come to ancient Earth, all of the simple farmers and whatnot would have no choice but to think of him as a god. Look at all these powers.
That whole adage about, sufficiently advanced technology and all that.
Back on the bridge, the crew is trying to turn the tractor beam around so it'll push on stuff. It doesn't really work. They don't get free of the big hand.
The hand's like a force field, not really something matter that they can interact with, so...
This is just a fun little aside that someone mentioned a long time ago. But in this episode, they turn the tractor beam into a repulsor beam by hitting a switch.
Yep.
In the second episode of Next Generation, it takes them half the episode and a genius kid to change the tractor beam into a repulsor beam.
So, maybe after this point, they came up with some ridiculous safety measures in order to discourage people from making into a repulsor beam. Or maybe there's some sort of legal reason they're not supposed to have repulsor beams, and so they just make it really hard to change the setting while back.
Yes, the Treaty of the Repulsor Beam incident.
Yeah, maybe the part of the peace treaty with the Klingons was the Federation can't use repulsor beams anymore.
Sulu finds a power source on the planet but can't pinpoint it yet. But they do have readings on the landing party. This has been your ship update. Now back to our regularly scheduled sexism.
Yep.
Palamas and Apollo are talking in a forest. She asks about the Greek gods and what happened to the rest of them. And he goes on this long story about how they lived on Earth for a while, but then the humans kind of moved on and stopped worshipping them, and gods can't really live without love and admiration, and they all kind of faded into the wind.
They all became dust on the wind. Like sands in an hourglass.
These are the days of our lives. Unlike all the other gods, he just knew that if he waited long enough, humans would one day come to the stars and find him again.
I guess that ended up being true. The problem is he had some assumptions about humans still wanting to worship him.
Yeah, I'm not sure the logic here. Humans grew tired of us. I'm going to leave and wait for them to come back, and then they'll totally want to worship me again.
Yeah, because they'll be missing having to worship me.
Yeah, seems to be the logic. He also explains how years and years ago, gods used to take mortal mates, and then they both kiss, but at least this time it seems a little more consensual than a lot of other ones on this show, so I'll give it to him.
How quickly this love story is moving is pretty quick.
Yeah, a little quick, but he is a god, I suppose.
Yeah, maybe he has pheromones.
Back at the temple, Chekhov is reading a large energy field, but he also can't track down the source.
It seems everything around here is probably radioactive. Oh no, we're going to die.
They theorize that Apollo's extra organ might let him channel energy around like an electric eel.
Cool.
Yeah, and that's what gives him all of his cool god powers.
This doesn't make much evolutionary sense, but okay.
No, it doesn't. But if they could only find this power source and destroy it, they might be able to, take out Apollo's powers. But then Apollo reappears. Scotty gets mad at him again because this time he didn't bring back Lieutenant Palamas. Apollo lightning bolts him, gets tired, and then disappears immediately.
Lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt. Oh, I'm done. I'm out. Laters, guys. I'll see you at the food tent.
They notice that Apollo keeps getting tired and disappearing. And Kirk recalls that in ancient Greek myths, the gods would need to rest after expending energy. Which ones? Like, which myth is this? Because I don't remember that one.
Neither do I. Anytime that sort of like was maybe implied, I'd guess I always had the impression that it would be more of the god just was finished doing whatever they're doing, so they're going to go home and hang out there. I don't know.
I don't think I've heard a story of like, and then Zeus threw the mighty lightning bolt and had to have a lie down.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember that one, so no.
But if Apollo is one of the actual Greek gods, he may also have these restrictions on using his power. So if we can just make him attack us again, we can all jump him. McCoy points out that that's a really dumb plan and is going to get one of them killed. But Kirk says, yeah, but not all of us.
Ho-ho!
Back on the bridge again, Uhura is working on the communication board. Spock has a new plan to break free of the field, but also like open holes in it so that they can communicate. But they haven't done that yet.
They're still working on it. They're having to zap things and solder things and do a bunch of differential equations.
Basically. I mean, he does just hand the guy a giant board full of math and goes, do this.
Solve these equations and get back to me with, and you'll get graded on your assignment.
Back at the temple, we have Apollo reappearing, this time with Palamas. So Scotty calms down for a minute because he doesn't attack him immediately this time.
Mm-hmm.
Kirk gets mad at Apollo for wanting them to worship him, and they all turn their backs on him and ignore him as he tells them to go forth and gather laurel leaves and sacrifice deers and such.
As Greek gods do.
They turn around, and apparently their plan is to stand around and just laugh at him awkwardly until he gets mad.
And there's vicious mockery going on here.
Yeah, it's not a great plan. But okay.
I guess if you just want to annoy a Greek god, this is how you do it.
Apollo is just about to lightning bolt Kirk to death when Palamas suddenly jumps in front of him and convinces him to not kill any of them, which ruins Kirk's plan, and he's very upset.
You sort of look at Kirk's face, he's like, oh, god damn it.
All these women not wanting to get killed.
I was about to get laser zapped to death, and that would have solved all our problems, but no, she had to go save our lives.
Apollo agrees to be lenient, but tells them that they should start making plans to bring down the rest of the crew, and also you're going to have to dismantle your ship for materials. Okay, bye.
Oh, that sucks.
Kirk says that he has one more idea on how to defeat Apollo, but it depends on Palamas' loyalty, which he seems very dubious of.
Oh, is she fallen in love or only kind of in love?
Back in the forest, we have a big old monologue from Apollo about how Kirk and company have forgotten the meaningful things in life, like worshipping him, and how there's a natural order to things where humans have to worship him, and he's just going to remind them of this natural order that will make them happier.
I'm suddenly having flashbacks to the first Avengers movie where Loki's in Berlin, and he's like, everyone must obey me, and then one guy stands up, like, bitch, please.
Yeah, this is interesting because they're doing this whole natural order where humans are supposed to be servile to higher beings and stuff. This is the first time we've gotten the argument on the other side for this show. Usually they're upholding it the other direction.
A little bit, yeah.
Also, he plans to make Palamas the mother of a new race of gods, and she seems pretty into this idea.
Maybe she just wants to be a mom, and this is the first solid opportunity where she's going to get the chance?
Maybe.
I guess.
Back at the temple, Palamas reappears, which is really convenient that he sent her back alone because Kirk needed to talk to her.
That's very convenient of you, Apollo. Thank you.
Kirk gives her a big ol' speech about how they have to stick together because they're all humans. And that is all, basically. That's my argument. We're all humans, and you need to reject Apollo in order to save us all because we're all humans.
And it's a real long speech, too. It's like, we're all tied together. Humans can't escape each other. Gotta remember who you are, man. And then, the only thing that is truly yours is other humans. Yeah, and that's like your duty, yo. Come on, follow my orders.
Yeah, it is just unbearable. It's just awkward. It's weird and awkward, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like, feel this flesh on flesh. It's like, you just said Apollo was basically human except for like one extra organ.
Yeah.
And this is your argument?
I'm just throwing my hands up in the air. I was like, okay, Kirk, this is your play. I know how things going to turn out because it's a Star Trek, but come on.
He orders her to reject Apollo because it is her duty to do so. Back on the ship, we've established communications.
Sweet, we can actually talk to people.
Hooray. Spock tells Kirk that they found the power source in the planet. It seems to be coming from the temple thing that they've been standing next to the entire time.
Oh, who would imagine that?
I don't know. It's like not like it's the most obvious place it could possibly be or anything.
The only structure around.
Kirk orders them to target the temple with the phasers, but not to fire until he tells them to. Back in the forest, Palamas tells Apollo that she is anthropologically interested in him, but of course not romantically. She was just doing that to get information because it's her job, and to her, he's nothing but a specimen in a jar.
Fooled you.
This is the thing that, like, they keep taking this bit out of context and putting it in Tumblr GIFs and, like, go like, oh my god, look how awesome and strong this woman is.
Yeah, out of context, that seems quite reasonable. In fact, that's kind of admirable. But in context, the episode, this is just such a weird, like, back and forth, flip-flopping everywhere. You're like, this lady is kind of really just bending down to whatever authority she finds most authoritative.
Just like a woman should.
And that's just terrible.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically what the show is saying. Like, first, Apollo tells her to love him, and she goes, oh, okay. This man told me what to do. And then Kirk goes, stop loving him. He says, well, okay, this man told me what to do now.
Aye, Captain, you're my boss, so I'm going to agree to this now, yeah.
It's good thing she did reject Apollo, because he gets really mad, calls down a thunderstorm, basically does that whole, I'm an abusive asshole, and you rejected me, so now I'm going to kill you, and everyone you know.
And death, destruction, because I was turned down by a woman. Oh, God.
Yep, he uses a wind machine to blow around the forest for a little bit. It's kind of depressing to watch because the actress has to keep holding her costume on physically to keep it from blowing off in the wind machine.
This is uncomfortable to watch.
She finally runs off, and Apollo turns into a big giant face in the clouds and starts looming at her.
As you do.
Kirk finally orders Spock to fire on the temple, even after this has been going on for a little while.
The lieutenant's not back yet. He's just like, we're spooked enough. Let's blow this place up. Go, shoot, fire.
She probably ticked them off enough. She's dead now. Apollo comes back as the temple begins to glow under the phaser fire. Palamas also shows up, and Scotty grabs her and hides her behind a rock. She's fine. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Apollo starts yelling for them to stop and shoots lightning at the ship out of his fingertips, but it really doesn't seem to do much.
Zap, 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 zap. But wait, aren't you in charge of that giant hand that could crush the Enterprise like a bug?
Yeah, he almost destroyed the ship a minute ago. And now he's just like, yeah, stop it.
You're shooting lasers at me. I gotta do my own thing back. Otherwise, it's not fair.
They keep firing until the temple is rubble. Apollo then grows really large and starts yelling to the heavens that his friends were right and the time of the gods has passed, and then he fades away into nothing.
Bye.
Kirk wanders through the ruined temple, and they say that it's too bad that they had to kill Apollo because, if he really was the ancient Greek dude, then they got basically their entire culture from the ancient Greeks, and by extension, these god aliens. So would it really have killed them to gather just a few laurel leaves?
Well, it almost did kill them, actually.
The end. This is it. This is just like, well, we just went through this thing where we barely escaped with our lives. Was he really that bad? It's the new way of writing Kirk. He kills things without thinking and then later goes, but should I have killed him without thinking?
I'm going to think about this for the 10 seconds it takes to get to the end credits. The end!
That was who mourns for Adonais. Nobody. Maybe Kirk for a second.
I guess Apollo did a little bit, maybe, but then he died, so nobody anymore.
Yeah. This is very weird to me.
Yeah, this is a pretty weird episode.
So, I had to do a bit of research here, because where we are now, after the 90s and the 2000s in our good old, postmodernist society we've developed here. Mm-hmm. The ancient aliens theory is that GIF you keep seeing on Facebook with the guy with the crazy hair.
Yes. I'm not saying it's X, but it's aliens.
But apparently, in the early 1950s, through the 60s, it was actually a theory that was gaining a lot of prevalence and people were considering.
Mm-hmm.
Though I did some research here, and kind of the first major proponent of this that I could find is a guy named Harold T. Wilkins, who was a British journalist. And he was a proponent of, first off, the hollow earth theory, which is that the earth is actually filled with a bunch of tunnels, and once you get inside of the crust, there's kind of another sun where the center of the earth is, and there's like a skin, sort of a hollow inverted earth with continents and dinosaurs and stuff on the inside of it.
Which makes no physical sense, but okay.
Yeah, that's apparently, according to him, where Atlantis wound up, and also Atlantis was somewhere in South America, possibly in Brazil, and there's a bunch of tunnels there that should lead you to this underground hollow earth Atlantis.
No, Brazil is where the South Atlantic magnetic anomaly is. Atlantis is clearly in the Pegasus galaxy. Come on, guy.
So he was a proponent of that. He was also the proponent of something called the white gods theory.
That sounds problematic.
Yeah. The idea with that is there used to be a race of white people that occupied the entirety of South America that have since disappeared, but those are the people that the ancient Mesoamerican cultures considered to be their gods.
I don't think I like this guy. He seems to be full of crap.
Then he also later wrote a few books called like Flying Saucers on the Attack, Flying Saucers on the Moon, Flying Saucers Uncensored, which I guess is the naughty version.
for all your explicit flying saucer needs.
Yes. And that is some of the things. Also, apparently a book called Strange Mysteries of Space and Time, where he kind of talked about disappearing aircraft ships and things during the Middle Ages and medieval history, which kind of started getting the ball rolling on this ancient astronauts theory.
So basically, he was all about the stuff you would find on shows that were popular in the 90s, like Sightings and like the X-Files. Basically, all the kind of out there stuff that conspiracy theory people used to be all about, but they've moved on since then.
Yeah, and this kind of started gaining more prevalence through his lifetime in the 50s. He died in 1960, so he was not around during the time of the Star Trek stuff.
Yeah.
The 1960s, it started gaining more and more relevance, especially amongst some German writers. So it was actually not an unaccepted theory at the time this episode came out. It was considered something that should be considered. And it kind of came to this sort of head in the pop culture sense with the book Chariots of the Gods.
I've heard about that one.
It's a German book. I cannot read the German name, but it was originally German, got translated into English. But Eric von Daniken wrote this in the late 1960s, and it became very, very popular, but also started academically being denounced, and then into the 70s, this ancient aliens astronaut theories started being denounced more and more in the academic circles until now we basically consider it this weird kind of out there crackpot thing.
Yeah, because as with a lot of stuff that kind of bubbles up like this, you sort of have one or two guys that gets like half a truth and then they start running with it's like, okay, so if this is a thing, then I'm going to not really do any research on the context of what this thing is a part of or, actual evidence out in the world. I'm going to latch onto this single element and I'm going to start running with it down the rabbit hole of whatever I just kind of came up with that makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. And so you build this complex web of interconnected ideas that, sort of are generated by these sort of points of, I'm tempted to say illogic, but they're all trying to be self-consistent, even if they're failing at being actual science.
Well, that's the thing. They're all logically presented, but they're based on quick assumptions and faulty premises.
Yeah, so they're not well found, not well grounded, and so they build up these complex universes of ideas, and then they start spreading these ideas and they popularize them, and then people that have no connection to that world entirely start hearing about this, and people start bothering them. It's like, hey, you're like an archaeologist, and I'm going to ask you about this nonsense here. And the archaeologist is like, what? No, this doesn't make any sense. What? Where are you getting this crap? And then the the conspiracy theory peddler is like, oh, obviously this academic wants to hide things from you because they don't want you to know the truth. You have to go and only read my books instead. Oh, yeah.
The very interesting thing that I've found with this episode is it's one of the few times that I've seen an ancient astronaut theory presented for something Greek.
Which I thought was kind of novel.
Yeah, well, so generally, as would be suggested by good old Wilkins' White Gods novels, a lot of the times the ancient astronaut theories are used to kind of dismiss non-white cultures. It's very, very unusual for you to get a theory like this, though of course, once it started getting popularized, people started applying it basically to everything. But it's much more unusual to get it in something like Greek, Roman, or even like Persian. You get a little bit with some things like that. I guess Persian is far enough back, you get slightly more in that kind of sphere. But things that people would consider kind of the direct antecedents to like America and the modern Western cultures, you usually don't get the aliens thing as much in there. It's a lot more with like African cultures and South American cultures and Mesoamerican cultures, where you're like, where people are in there going like, well, they could not have done this. Like, this culture didn't have the level of technology to build a pyramid, or didn't have the level of technology to carve a stone head of this size or something. But, the Greeks and Romans definitely had that level of technology. We don't really need to explain it with aliens.
These guys that were coincidentally almost our ancestors here, they knew what they're doing, but these other guys in the other part of the world, they couldn't have known anything, man. And yeah, there's a little bit of racism in there.
Well, it's the same kind of thing. I hadn't heard of the white gods theory for South America, but when they first started discovering ancient African civilizations and some of the temples that they found in the jungles down there, they basically had this whole theory of an ancient white race that existed in Africa and built up a kingdom until they were destroyed by the black Africans.
Wow.
That's the entire thing with the King Solomon's Mine and similar books.
And I just have to shake my head.
And we moved a little bit away from that in modern cultures. But now we've kind of replaced the hitherto unknown white race that would have existed in places where white people could not have existed with aliens.
Yeah, well, if it's not white people, it's got to be aliens. That's the only explanation, other than people actually knew what they were doing and made these things themselves.
I coincidentally saw this thing on a Tumblr blog that I follow about Mesoamerican art that just had a thing that said, just because white people couldn't do it doesn't mean it was aliens.
I like that.
So you get into a lot of weird racial stuff with the ancient astronauts theories, which is why I thought it was so odd that they chose a Greek god for this in this time period.
Well, I'd say that maybe the choice could have been rooted in that Greek is one of the things that the audience is more familiar with. You don't expect random Joe in the 60s to know anything about the Mesoamerican cultures at all. Unless you're basically someone who's already well versed in this ancient alien sort of stuff in the first place.
That's true, and also it speaks a little bit with some things that I was reading more recently. You had the passing familiarity with the Greek gods, but you also had a bunch of white people writing the show who would have been more familiar with the Greek gods. Later on, there's an episode of Star Trek the Animated Series where they have more or less the same thing, but they meet Quetzalcoatl.
Big bird?
No, the big snake.
Oh,
feathered serpent.
Feathered serpent, yeah.
And that is specifically because one of the writers on the show had a Mesoamerican ancestry and wanted to bring that in. So it speaks to kind of the diversity and representation that they brought onto the writing staff later on in not this series, but the, I guess, direct sequel to this series.
The animated series of questionable canonicalness, but, kind of hooky on all that as well. So, though, with them picking the Greeks, I do have to wonder about that timeline I kind of mentioned in the synopsis bit there. Because this guy, Apollo keeps on talking about 5,000 years ago, and then it's sort of implied that these ancient Greek gods were instrumental in the development of philosophy and all that in the sort of late classical period. And that doesn't line up at all. In fact, 5,000 years ago, this future in Star Trek, was basically in the middle of the Minoan civilization, which weren't really about the quote classical Greek gods. They had their own sort of thing going on that may have been related, but they weren't like, this is Apollo. It's like, this is our god of something or other. And people of the modern, today don't really know the names real well, so it's kind of, classical Greek sort of pantheon was developed a bit later, like thousands of years later sort of situation. So,
well, you're obviously still dealing with the kind of Squire of Gothos timeline where they didn't want to nail down when this series was actually set.
Oh yeah, we're like 900 years in the future as opposed to a couple hundred.
The really weird thing that you get into with this, and I think it's the only other thing to really talk about because they spent so much time on the Ancient Aliens thing, they didn't do much else with it. Theologically, this is very iffy because there's a line that I didn't find a good way to mention where Apollo says that they need to learn something about the gods. And Kirk turns around and goes, "One is just fine for us, thanks."
I caught that as well. It's like, well, I guess there's some sort of monotheistic religion here in Star Trek universe. Is it Christianity?
Yeah, well, because it is written in the 60s, the only thing that line could mean would be the Christian God.
Yeah, generally, yes. But I'm going to say that it's a new branch of Zoroastrianism. That's my headcanon now.
That is what I couldn't quite figure out what they were trying to get across with this episode. Because they mention things about not needing the gods anymore, and they have a line that explicitly says humanity outgrew you. But they don't mean that they have outgrown gods in general, because they mention the fact that they believe in a god. They mean specifically that they have outgrown the Greek gods.
Yes, them
which
specifically.
Doesn't make a lot of sense if you think about it.
Like, well, what does that mean? Is it like, okay, you need to have this sort of godlike presence that exists in your life that you can accidentally run into and get in an argument with, and then they smite you? Is that something people needed at some point?
Yeah, they don't really get into comparative religion. They also keep calling it mythology, which basically is our word for any religion that existed too long ago or looks too foreign.
Yep. How many centuries ago was it? This many. Oh, okay, then it's definitely myth. Oh, okay. As opposed to something that people actually believed in and, built temples about and all that fun.
But the odd thing is they didn't go with the normal kind of god alien route that a lot of science fiction does, which is, you were just pretending to be a god. How dare you, trick our ancestors and take advantage of people like that?
Basically the Stargate route.
Yeah, they didn't go kind of the Stargate, aliens are assholes who are just pretending to be gods to take advantage of you. This is quite literally a god. He has the powers. He does the things. He wants to be worshipped. He says that he needs to be worshipped in order to survive. And then when they reject him, he fades away in this way that he has said is not exactly like dying, because they're gods and they just kind of scatter themselves throughout the universe. So that he is a god. They are undisputedly telling us that this entity is a Greek god, indistinguishable from any other kind of god.
So I guess Kirk gets to sort of kill a god this episode.
Yeah, but what's the point? If you believe in a god, and this guy is a god, you didn't have any kind of comparative religion things. You didn't talk about the philosophy. You didn't even particularly talk about how you don't want to be enslaved there in service to this guy for all eternity. You basically just said, we don't need you anymore, even though we've got a new one. We don't need you. We've got our own. Thanks.
Yeah, we got our super special god, and we're just gonna say bye, and then we're gonna have some arguments and some fighting, and Scotty's gonna try to get himself killed again. But that's the episode. At the end.
It's odd to accept this being as a god, given the implied Christian theming that they're using for the Star Trek people. Because the basic idea that other gods exist is not something that's readily accepted in modern Christianity.
More of those other gods aren't just don't exist in period.
Which is interesting because I was reading this thing a while ago, and I'm blanking on the name, but apparently a lot of old biblical references kind of don't use a monotheistic approach so much as a polytheistic approach with monotheistic worship.
Like, there is only one God you should worry about, but there's other beings out there that are kind of like gods.
Yeah, well, it makes
explicit
reference to the gods of other regions.
Mm-hmm.
This is just not the one you should be worshiping. So other gods exist and are there. They're just not the one you should be worshiping. It's like the whole, it's the whole 10 Commandments thing. Like, one of the 10 Commandments is worship no other god above me. Well, if there aren't any other gods, where's the worry? It's not worship no other god. It's worship no other god above me.
You can maybe give them lip service, but you put your whole heart towards me, baby. Come on.
So they're actually working with a weirdly anachronistic version of Christian belief systems that you wouldn't expect during the 60s.
Well, maybe the writers are from like the ancient times as well. Maybe they're secretly Greek gods.
So I have no idea what they are trying to say about religion in this episode, because it seems to be written largely as a denunciation of religion as kind of an outmoded thing that they don't need anymore, which I think Roddenberry himself kind of espoused that view.
Mm-hmm.
He was more of a secular humanist.
So you're suggesting is that maybe Roddenberry was using Apollo as a stand-in of sorts, but it wasn't really going full in because otherwise he'd just get kicked off the network.
Well, that's the odd thing, is they explicitly make reference to who you could only assume to be the Christian God, because who else is it going to be in the 60s?
Which does kind of muddle it all. I got the feeling that's sort of like something you're sort of forced to put in there. Yeah,
maybe. But if you didn't reference it, most people would just assume. Like, I'm sure 90% of the people who just watch this show just assume that everyone on the ship is Christian, because that's who Americans think everyone is.
Yep. Well, you're from space. You're obviously a Christian. We don't even speak your language.
Yeah, so what was the point of having that line in there? Like, it makes it so you can't really figure out what the point of the episode is, because it goes from being a denunciation of religion to being a denunciation of the Greek religion specifically.
Take that, Greece?
Yeah, take that, ancient Greece. All you Apollo worshippers out there.
Your ancient steps and column designs are out of style, man. It's all whack. You're never gonna oracle us up a good future here.
They didn't go into "you're just tricking us." Like, they say "bag of tricks" a few times, but they accept his powers pretty readily. It kind of made me think of the probably spiritual redo of this episode, which would have been Devil's Due in Next Generation, with the con woman devil character.
Well, the devil went down to that planet. She's looking for a deed to the planet to steal.
But it's just it's weirdly muddled. The only consistent through line of this episode is women be crazy,
which is terrible, and not really one I want to sort of dwell on, and because we keep coming back to this bizarre point they're trying to make, or accidentally making if they're not intending it, and it's just getting kind of old.
Yeah, it is. The entire through line of her character is she gets asked out by Scotty, who is then just super possessive.
Mm-hmm.
Then she falls in love with Apollo out of nowhere for no particular reason, and then decides to betray Apollo out of nowhere for no particular reason.
Maybe Stockholm Syndrome, and then, I don't know, that gets broken up. I have no idea.
A very quick turnaround. Yeah. It's just, she's flighty and has emotions, and that's wrong.
Well, that's depressing.
Do we have anything less depressing?
Well, I could go back to the history stuff and about the Bronze Age collapse and how that was weird, but that's not. It's kind of tangential to the episode, honestly.
It's a little tangential. Also, are we going to solve the Bronze Age collapse in the next 10 minutes of episode?
Probably not.
Did the sea people even exist? The sea people are aliens. There we go.
Oh, yeah, okay, so the sea people are aliens, but they're not the Apollo's aliens. They're different aliens that came to Earth, and maybe they were actually, Apollo lied about why they left, because the sea people drove away the Greek gods, and because they were invading, and they wanted to take over the Earth's oceans, and then raid the countryside for reasons, and the Greek gods didn't like that, but these sea people were able to overpower them and turn off their special organs. And so the Greek gods are like, well, we're powerless unless we leave, so let's leave and then just pretend we're leaving for other reasons.
Oh, there you go. They just didn't want to talk about it. I don't know where the Egyptians are going to wind up.
Yeah, the Egyptians, they're going to build a death ray and that destroys the sea people, but the sea people get the revenge, the death ray is destroyed. It's just a whole mess.
Sinks into the sea, becomes Atlantis.
Exactly, and it was actually a mobile, like aircraft carrier with a giant death ray on board, and they sunk it. It was just terrible.
We've strayed into Edgar Rice Burroughs territory.
I don't know. I'm kind of enjoying myself here.
This is completely off topic, but I was just reading through a collection that I got, which is the Edgar Rice Burroughs Venus collection, which is a little lesser known than his Mars collection. Mm-hmm. And in the intro to that book, they mention how the guy who is the point of view character in that book just got done going on an expedition with Tarzan to the, hollow Earth center of the world, which, I did not realize that Edgar Rice Burroughs invented the shared universe.
Surprise!
Tarzan, John Carter of Mars, and this dude on Venus all exist in the same canonical solar system.
Nice. I was unaware of that.
Also, apparently he has I think he has a book series set on basically every planet in the solar system at some point or another.
I'll have to get onto that on my own end here.
Yeah, I love Burroughs is such a weirdly racist author, but I love reading his stuff just for the weirdness in it.
And sometimes you kind of have to find yourself in situations like this is half awful and half awesome, but I trust you to be responsible enough to take it in and not be turned evil or awful or something like that. I trust you, Kepler.
Oh, if you want that, I just randomly was at a bookstore the other day. You can tell how much I have to talk about in this episode. I was at a bookstore the other day and I randomly stumbled on a Heinlein book called Farnham's Freehold, which is apparently about a guy who goes through a nuclear war, which transports his nuclear war bunker into the future, where everyone is dead except that Black Africans have taken over the world because no one bothered to bomb Africa.
Lucky them, I guess.
But you can probably anticipate how well Heinlein writes about black people.
Yeah, this is an okay base concept, but given its Heinlein, yeah, no.
Yeah.
So one of my personal goals in writing science fiction is to write better science fiction that doesn't go down those awful avenues that a lot of the older classical writers did. I try to make good things seem normal and awesome, and terrible things actually seem terrible. So
well, it seems like an odd direction for science fiction, but good luck.
Yeah. What do you mean good things are good and terrible things are terrible? What?
That doesn't make any sense. What kind of science fiction are you writing?
Well, honestly, it's hard sci-fi political thrillers. But,
I feel like we've strayed.
Oh, again. Certainly, we've certainly strayed. I would sort of also glancing around some of the trivia rundowns here. And some of these are kind of interesting, but not, I guess, jumping out at me. Like this episode, shows up in X-Men Apocalypse, in the background or something like that.
Yeah, I've seen it pop up. This is one of the ones I was more familiar with in general. It's a fairly famous episode.
I don't think I've actually seen this one before, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it per se, but I've seen enough of it. It gets referenced a lot. All right, I feel like we're running out of steam here.
So shall I move on to the game show?
Yes, apparently it's time for the galaxy's favorite game show.
Woo! Hey everybody, welcome back to the game show portion of the show. We got all the points tallied up. The contestants have answered to so many questions and caused us to ask so many more. And we got some awards to hand out. The first one is the Too Horny to Live award, which goes to Scotty for repeatedly getting himself zapped nearly to death because he just got the hots of Carolyn. What does he win, Gepwin?
Scotty wins a copy of The Game, The Secret Society of Pickup Artists, because he's bordering on that kind of territory here, and he needs to stop it.
Yeah, Scotty, you're usually quite competent, but yeah, this is getting kind of painful. Second award is the Sufficiently Advanced Aliens Award, which goes to Apollo for seemingly have godlike powers via a magical temple and some sort of super special awesome organ. What does he win, Gepwin?
Apollo gets really weird hair and to be used in 1 million internet GIFs.
Oh, I think he's going to be famous for a good long while. But is it going to be famous for, humorous sake, or is he actually going to get worshipped like he likes? I have my doubts. Our third award is the Myth-Busting Award, which goes to Spock and Kirk, but mostly Spock, for figuring out a way to take down the actual mythical Apollo. What does he win, Gepwin?
Spock wins one of those cool metal plates that says Busted on it from Mythbusters, because I missed that show.
Yes. Hoo-hoo. Spock, you busted that myth. Our last award is the TV Love Story Award, which goes to Carolyn for falling super in love and then super out of love in under an hour for the sole purpose of working the plot. What does she win, Gepwin?
Carolyn wins a rose, which she cannot give to Apollo for the tear-jerking ending of this was apparently a new reality series.
I think, we're not going to be kissed by a rose today.
Well, thank you to all of our contestants. I hope that you enjoy your prizes and, dying and being spread across the universe in the wind or whatever it was Apollo did.
Yes, we're getting the dust on the wind thing again.
And thank you for joining us here on the galaxy's favorite game show. Woo! Next week, I do not remember this episode even a little.
Something about computers, right?
The next episode is called The Changeling?
Yes, but does not involve Odo.
No, it doesn't involve Odo or changelings as, I understand them from, Celtic mythology.
Mm-hmm.
It apparently involves a space probe.
Yes, an ancient space probe that does weird stuff and wants to talk to its creator. I'm suddenly having flashbacks to some sort of motion picture.
I feel like this... Did they just reuse this concept for the first movie?
I think we're going to find out.
Yeah, it's very odd. I'm reading the synopsis and I still don't know what was going on. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to this.
Well, maybe we'll get lucky. Sometimes we do.
Oh, well, hopefully we will have more to talk about and less sexism.
Fingers crossed.
On The Changeling, which we will cover next week on Watches of Tomorrow.
Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, we meet V'ger's cousin. You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.